defense readiness and make sure we end up stronger at the end of this war than we were before. Thanks.
Representatives, it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of my government, on behalf of my Minister Dmytro Kuleba, and to start the final point of the architecture of the Crimea platform, which is the Black Sea Security Conference. You know, now we can say and state that the Crimea platform and its architecture has been fully accomplished and complete with its leaders level and the inaugural summit that we had in Kiev in 2021 before the full-fledged invasion started. The second line and domain of the Crimea platform is the forum and the summit that we had on the parliamentary level, which happened in Zagreb in October 2022, and then this Black Sea Conference as the final point and brick of the Crimea platform. What we expect is actually a very frank discussion, not only from the Black Sea countries that are naturally concerned with the security challenges that we had and started to have since the militarization of Crimea in 2014, but also a discussion and bigger and greater involvement of those countries concerned, because we believe that the Black Sea security issues are not only of a regional matter, but also of a global nature. And there is one lesson, which is a Crimea lesson, that brought us to a bigger war 24th of February, and it says directly, whenever the evil is not stopped, it becomes bigger. When 2014 happened and Crimea turned into a military base of Russia, when Black Sea and Azov Sea has actually turned into an inner lake of the Russian Federation, when Russia started to blockade the trade vessels that were coming from the Ukrainian ports since 2017 and other matters of security challenges, the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian officials have been knocking the doors and ringing the bells of international alarm, saying that we have to have a clear vision and strategy on how we can coordinate on the Black Sea region. So to conclude my remarks, I would say that the outcome of this Black Sea Security Conference will be and should be the vision of the need to have a clear strategy, the action, and the cohesion. Thank you. Government and the Ukrainian officials have been knocking the doors and ringing the bells of international alarm, saying that we have to have a clear vision and strategy on how we can coordinate on the Black Sea region. So to conclude my remarks, I would say that the outcome of this Black Sea Security Conference will be and should be the vision of the need to have a clear strategy, the action, and the cohesion. Thank you.
Bună dimineața! Îmi face o deosebită plăcere să găzduiesc astăzi la București două evenimente foarte importante. Este vorba despre conferința... Se pare că... Da. Nu știu dacă mergem. Este aprins, dar nu știu de ce nu merge. Mă auziți? Da, acum mergem. Bună dimineața, îmi face o deosebită plăcere să găzduiesc astăzi la București două evenimente de o importanță deosebită. Este vorba despre conferința privind securitatea Mării Negre, prima de acest fel organizată sub egida Platformei Internaționale Crimea, împreună cu Ucraina, împreună cu Ministerul Afacerilor Externe din Ucraina, Ministerul Apărării din România și Ministerul Apărării din Ucraina, precum și a doua sesiune a trilateralei între România, Republica Moldova și Ucraina, după cea pe care am organizat-o anul trecut la Odessa în luna septembrie. Ambele reuniuni reprezintă evenimente de importanță deosebită pentru România, pentru București, care iarăși devine, după reuniunile pe care le-am găzduit în noiembrie anul trecut, reuniunea liderilor de la München și reuniunea ministerială NATO, devine din nou capitala internațională a diplomației. Avem prezență astăzi la conferință, foarte multe delegații, sunt peste 20 de delegații care participă fizic, de asemenea încă 7 delegații care vor participa în format virtual, mulți colegi de-ai mei, miniștri de externe din Uniunea Europeană, dar și din alte regiuni, din India-Pacific, iată Australia, Japonia și alte state care doresc să participe la această conferință, peste 250 de delegați din peste 30 de țări care vin astăzi la București pentru a participa la acest eveniment. Așa cum am anunțat deja în cursul zilei de ieri, din păcate, domnul ministru Dumitru Kuleba nu mai poate să participe în format fizic, dar va participa în format online, din cauza evenimentelor de securitate și evoluțiilor de securitate care au avut loc recent în Ucraina. Și am condamnat ieri și voi condamna și astăzi cu multă fermitate violările dreptului internațional umanitar, crimele de război care au fost comise în Ucraina și este necesar ca comunitatea internațională să pedepsească aceste încălcări grave ale dreptului internațional. Este pentru prima dată când România și Ucraina organizează un astfel de eveniment. Este o expresie importantă a solidarității și a susținerii pe care România o acordă Ucrainei. Este în același timp o expresie a încrederii pe care Ucraina o are în cooperarea cu România. De asemenea, trebuie spus că importanța acestei conferințe rezidă în obiectivul pe care îl propune, și anume să discute lecțiile învățate în urma conflictului din Ucraina, să tragem concluzii cu privire la modalitățile în care putem să contracarăm efectele agresiunii ruse asupra Ucrainei, atât în ce privește Ucraina în sine, cât și în ceea ce privește celelalte state vulnerabile din regiune, în special Republica Moldova, dar și Georgia. De asemenea, dorim să contracarăm efectele războiului hibrid, războiului informațional, războiului cibernetic, pe care Federația Rusă îl instrumentează împotriva regiunii, împotriva statelor europene și aliate. Este în egală măsură o conferință care se concentrează nu doar pe dimensiunea hard a securității, ci se concentrează și pe aspecte care țin de libertatea navigației, libertatea comerțului, pe facilitarea rutelor de transport de energie în regiune, într-un cuvânt, pe transformarea Mării Negre, după ce acest război se va sfârși, cu victoria Ucrainei, așa cum ne dorim cu toții, să se transforme într-o zonă de pace și prosperitate. Există astfel de soluții și de aceea dorim să le discutăm astăzi pentru a crea, dacă se poate, o veritabilă strategie de răspuns la aceste amenințări și provocări. Astăzi voi sublinia nu doar rolul cheie pe care România îl joacă în arhitectura de securitate regională, ca dovada faptului că această conferință se desfășoară la București, dar voi pleda și pentru un angajament strategic al Uniunii Europene și al NATO în regiunea Mării Negre, dublat și de o agendă transatlantică solidă. După cum cunoașteți, Statele Unite pregătesc o strategie de securitate pentru Marea Neagră, la care și România a contribuit în mod substanțial. De asemenea, vom discuta despre construirea unei agende consistente de reziliență democratică și de prosperitate în regiune, consolidarea rolului flancului estic în ceea ce privește sistemul de descurajare și apărare al NATO, precum și în ceea ce privește susținerea perspectivei europene și euroatlantice a statelor din regiune. În ceea ce privește reuniunea trilaterală România-Republica Moldova-Ucraina, este iarăși un format extrem de important pe care l-am lansat anul trecut împreună cu colegii mei din Republica Moldova și din Ucraina. De data aceasta, în premieră, ne concentrăm asupra dimensiunii de securitate, după ce anul trecut la Odessa, prima reuniune a trilateralei s-a concentrat asupra interconectărilor și asupra cooperării în materie de energie, ceea ce a fost deosebit de util pentru că reuniunea de la Odessa s-a desfășurat cu aproximativ o lună înainte de bombardamentele ruse asupra infrastructurii critice energetice din Ucraina, care au determinat perturbări grave ale alimentării cu energie electrică pentru Republica Moldova și pentru Ucraina. Astăzi, în cadrul reuniunii trilaterale, vom discuta despre toate provocările de securitate asupra atât a Ucrainei cât și Republicii Moldova. Vom discuta cum să contracarăm agresiunea militară rusă și efectele acesteia, cum să contracarăm acțiunile hibride împotriva Republicii Moldova. Vom discuta despre evoluțiile legate de dosarul transnistrean și, nu în ultimul rând, vom adopta o declarație comună care va concentra angajamentul nostru de a ne întări cooperarea în acest format trilateral. Dorim să transmitem mesajul că securitatea Ucrainei și Republicii Moldova sunt interconectate și, în același timp, dorim să transmitem foarte clar mesajul că susținerea pentru consolidarea securității Ucrainei, pentru consolidarea securității Republicii Moldova, efortul României în acest sens, reprezintă o contribuție directă la întărirea securității României și a cetățenilor români. Sper că discuțiile de astăzi vor aduce rezultate foarte bune, concrete, și în acest fel România își va reconfirma profilul de actor regional relevant, ca aliat de încredere și ca furnizor de stabilitate și securitate în regiunea Mării Negre. Vă mulțumesc!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, dear journalists, media. Thank you for coming. My name is Elena Frolova. I'm representing Center for Defense Strategies. I'm one of the hosting parties of the conference. And we are very glad that this conference happened. Actually, we planned it for a few years. We planned it before the full-scale invasion of Russian Federation. And I think that this is a very good example that the Black Sea for a long time was out of the attention of the community of NATO, of leading countries who can support the security of this region. And actually this conference is planned to bring Black Sea back on the political map and to develop the discussions about the future security configuration of the Black Sea. We as the Black Sea nations, we in Romania and other Black Sea nations should play the substantial and leading role in bringing back the peace to this sea and land. And the conference actually combined here the efforts of experts and efforts of officials. And experts, representatives of expert network of Crimean Platform developed their recommendations, which I do recommend you to have a look. This is a non-paper which is delivered and which will be presented today to political decision makers, where we have a practical recommendation, what we can do for now to make the Black Sea region more sustainable, and how we see the future configuration, how we see the role of NATO, of US, of UK, of any substantial player, of Turkey, and how we see the role of the regional powers. So I do encourage you to listen attentively, to have a lot of difficult questions, and thank you one more time for paying attention to this conference. Let's make the Black Sea a peaceful and sustainable region. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bucharest. We are about to start in 2 minutes, so please take your seats. Thank you.
Dear Ministers, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is for me a great honor to open here in Bucharest the first Black Sea Conference under the aegis of the International Crimea Platform. And I am grateful to my colleague, Minister Angel Tâlvăr, for his partnership in making this conference a success. I'm sorry that due to unforeseen but very objective and very dire challenges related to the war, that my colleague and friend, Minister Kuleba, is not able to be here with us today in physical presence and needs to intervene via VTC. This is another cruel reminder of the impact of the war and that peace cannot come at any cost. I know, dear Dmitro, that this event is very dear to you and that you would have made everything in your power to be here. Romania strongly condemns the horrid and atrocious crimes committed by Russia and reiterates that all those responsible must be held accountable. Dear participants, I would like to suggest a moment of silence for the victims of this irrational and unjust war. To intervene via VTC. This is another cruel reminder of the impact of the war and that peace cannot come at any cost. I know, dear Dmitro, that this event is very dear to you and that you would have made everything in your power to be here. Romania strongly condemns the horrid and atrocious crimes committed by Russia. Thank you so much. And reiterates that all those responsible... Dear friends, today we have a full day of firsts, of premieres. It is the first ever security-focused conference under the Crimea Platform, and for Romania it is of particular significance because it is focused on Black Sea security. It is the first time that Romania and Ukraine organize together such an important event. And later today we will also have another first, which is the first time the trilateral Romania, Republic of Moldova, Ukraine, which was last time first organized in Odessa in September, in the format with our ministers of defense, in order to discuss security issues. So I am delighted to welcome to Bucharest our Ukrainian partners and friends, and I would like to acknowledge the presence here of Mrs. Emine Japarova, First Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Thank you for coming. The Romanian-Ukrainian partnership in organizing this conference could not have been more appropriate. Dear Dmitro, dear Alexei, this event is one more proof that Romania, our region, and as a matter of fact, the whole world, stands in solidarity with Ukraine and commends its extraordinary resilience in the face of the brutal Russian aggression. We continue to mourn the victims of Russia's war against Ukraine, and we must continue to push for accountability for the crimes committed in your country. Romania stood by Ukraine in the very first day of this aggression as a neighbor and a true friend. As a pillar of regional stability in the Black Sea area, a provider of security, Romania has promptly granted a multidimensional response. We have demonstrated to the Ukrainian people that we are together in words, but also in deeds. We have offered support to over 3.9 million Ukrainian refugees, while also facilitating the transit of almost 15 million tons of grain from Ukraine through our territory. I reassure you that the Romanian support towards Ukraine will continue. We will also resolutely accompany Ukraine on its European and Euro-Atlantic path of integration. And I want to reaffirm Romania's full determination to continue our multidimensional support for as long as it takes to win this war. We all want peace. Peace in full respect of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, in full respect of the UN Charter and of the fundamental principles of international law. But negotiations can only start when Ukraine is ready, and the victory will look like in the way Ukraine will define it. Distinguished audience, your presence here today is vivid proof of our common goal to reverse Russia's aggression, to defend our common security and values, and to consolidate the rules-based international order. We are gathered here because we all have a stake in the security of the Black Sea, its present and its future. I welcome your presence and your interest. Unfortunately, the events of the past year have confirmed what Romania was already warning about for quite a number of years. Instead of peace and stability, the Black Sea region has become the primary target of the Russian aggression. For years, Russia has weaponized every means at its disposal to keep the countries in the area in what it sees in a totally illegitimate way as its sphere of influence. Protracted conflicts, corruption, energy supplies, agricultural exports, hybrid tactics always accompanied the Russian actions, and such behavior will continue. Close partner countries in the region, like the Republic of Moldova, are increasingly impacted by Russian pressure. Russia has expanded control over the northwest basin of the Black Sea, in close proximity of the Romanian waters, and implicitly the Allied territorial waters, in effect placing constraints on economic activities, posing outright challenges to maritime transport and impeding the freedom of navigation, and increasing the risk of miscalculations. Ladies and gentlemen, the strong and united reaction of the European, Euro-Atlantic community and their global partners challenged Russia's behavior and hopefully discouraged other actors from using the same tools and patterns of aggression. But we must do more. Romania's position is clear and has been stated on numerous occasions, including at the NATO Foreign Ministerial that I hosted in Bucharest last November. The first such type of allied formal reunion on the eastern flank after the beginning of the war against Ukraine. The Black Sea is critical to the collective security of NATO, to the future of European security and prosperity, and to the rules-based international order. Romania is doing a lot to strengthen Black Sea security for NATO and EU members, and as well as for our partners, be it Ukraine, the victim of Russia's aggression, or for, as I previously said, the Republic of Moldova and Georgia, who are, after Ukraine, the most vulnerable to Moscow's pressures. NATO's new strategic concept states, as Romania strongly advocated, that Russia is the most direct and serious threat to the alliance, and that the Black Sea is of strategic importance to Euro-Atlantic security. Given the historical decision adopted in Madrid last year, NATO is transforming its posture, especially on the eastern flank, in view of ensuring the forward defense. As we prepare for the NATO summit in Vilnius, we need to work for the full implementation of the decisions taken in Madrid, especially those related to the defense and deterrence posture on the eastern flank, including at the Black Sea. We are also firmly standing by the open doors policy and the Bucharest summit decisions. We will work towards a strategic alignment of NATO and Ukraine, just as I have supported at the beginning of April the resumed NATO-Ukraine Commission after 6 years, and where I have participated together with Minister Kuleba. It is clear that Ukraine is essential to our future European security, just as the Republic of Moldova. For Romania at national level, it is more than clear that the consolidation of the security of Ukraine and of the Republic of Moldova means the consolidation of our own security. Our support through the voluntary contributions to NATO defense capacity building programs and through the European Peace Facility to Ukraine and Republic of Moldova is a clear proof that our investment in consolidating their resilience continues. Guaranteeing hard security is the foundation for security in general, but not its sole component. Security also means societal resilience, given by democracy, by individual liberties, by rule of law, by accountability, by fighting disinformation, and having reliable food and energy supplies. Safety of critical infrastructure is also a prerequisite. So we must work together towards strengthening all these other components. Dear guests, Romania advocates for a joint NATO-EU long-term coordinated strategy with a strong US presence and involvement in order to consolidate our security, prosperity, democratic resilience, and connectivity of the region, and support the advancement of legitimate European and Euro-Atlantic aspirations. In NATO's long-term adaptation process, a strong foothold of the alliance in the Black Sea is a must. Within the alliance, we have to call for a permanent, sustainable presence along NATO's entire eastern flank with a solid component in the Black Sea. Romania will continue to work with our NATO allies to develop a regular rotational maritime presence in the Black Sea and defend freedom of navigation. We welcome the high interest of the United States in the Black Sea and look forward to our strategy, to our partners' strategy in the area, as Romania has already sent its contribution in this regard. We welcome the broad anticipated focus of the approach encompassing security in all its formats. Additionally, we will work within the European Union on coordinating a strategy to support democratic initiatives and economic prosperity in the region, which includes European Union members, but also European Union aspirant nations. Other EU-related instruments or NATO programs or regional initiatives, such as Bucharest 9 format and the Three Seas initiative, provide valuable avenues to increase the strategic resilience of the countries in the region. The President of Romania, Mr. Klaus Iohannis, will host in September the Three Seas Initiative Summit, and we are working hard to prepare effective and substantial deliveries. All the above should serve to develop opportunities for increased investment and economic expansion, particularly on energy, climate and transport and digital infrastructure. On a global scale, efforts must be redoubled to counter Russia's propaganda and misinformation, which aims at breaking our unity and solidarity. At the same time, measures to prevent agriculture-related crises in vulnerable countries, especially in Africa, would clearly bolster the credibility to our actions and efforts. Dear friends, Romania's top priority is to transform the Black Sea region from an area of conflict to an area of peace, stability and prosperity. Restoring peace and stability in our area will require a long-term effort. Mutual solidarity, unity of purpose, coherence in our actions are key requisites for success and crucial for mutual long-term security and prosperity. Adaptation to the new regional and global realities is now the challenge of our time, and it is something we need to deal with head-on. The Black Sea is a mirror in which the European continent and the world can see what their future will look like. It will be either free and democratic or ruled by fear, by hatred, and the will of the most powerful. It is up to us to shape our future. Our discussions today will also chart this way forward. I am sure our debates will contribute to fostering ideas on how to increase security in the region in order to transform it in a true sea of peace, stability, and prosperity. Thank you. Dear Dmytro, I'm very glad to see you online. I hope you can hear us.
I hope.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Good.
It is.
I see Bogdan speaking, so I will wait until he puts his microphone down.
Dear Dmytro, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
Wonderful. So, I'm very glad to invite you as co-host of this conference to take the floor. And I want to express my gratitude to you, Dmytro, for the initiative of organizing this event in Bucharest. And I'm very sorry that you couldn't make it in physical presence, but we do understand, all of us, this terrible situation that you are facing and you have to manage. So, you have the floor, dear Dmytro. You're welcome to Bucharest Online.
Thank you. Dear Bogdan, dear Nico, dear Alexei, ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely regret not joining you in person in Bucharest today because of the developments that have kept me in Kiev. I began my working day with, I think, the same task as my dear colleague Alexei, making calls, texting messages about on speeding up deliveries of weapons to Ukraine. This is what he and me do on the daily basis, 24/7, to speed up preparations for the counteroffensive of Ukraine. And of course, we were all devastated yesterday by the horrible video. And we spent the day yesterday mobilizing international reaction to this horrific crime. Today, first of all, I thank you, Bogdan, for supporting this initiative to call together this forum and give a closer look at the present and future of the Black Sea region. The International Crimea Platform has proven to be an effective mechanism. It has brought together peace-loving nations which oppose aggression and occupation. We are united by UN Charter principles and the shared conviction that Crimea is Ukraine and it will return under Ukraine's control. And every time you hear anyone from any corner of the world saying that Crimea is somehow special and should not be returned to Ukraine as any other part of our territory, you have to know one thing. Ukraine categorically disagrees with these statements. There is no difference between Simferopol, Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, or any other Ukrainian city. They all must and will be Ukraine again, like Kherson already did. I think we all agree today that Russian aggression has broken our region's security into many pieces that need to be put together anew. Many of us thought the 21st century would be one of peace, development and cooperation. Unfortunately, Russia traveled the opposite way and arrived in the 19th century of colonial conquests. Now there is a bleeding wound in the middle of Europe, a dark and surreal time. But as they say, dark times bring forward good people. There is a lot of light, courage and power in those around the world who support Ukraine. I take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you present here or not for standing with us in the darkest hour. We are a community, united not only by common values, but also by common sense and common sea. We all want it to be an area of peace and prosperity, not a war zone. Black Sea is instrumental for making the whole of Europe peaceful and future-oriented. Sadly, Black Sea is also a showcase of how rapidly things can deteriorate if one neglects threats. For years, Russia has been saber-rattling and militarizing in front of us. Georgia, Ukraine, Syria, and Ukraine again. Moscow was launching one brutal attack after another. Many in the West chose to believe that Russians had their own truth. But the one and only truth is that Russia has always prepared for a big imperialistic war with an end goal of holding another Yalta conference to divide Europe into spheres of influence. I regret to say it, but I believe the West had no consistent Black Sea strategy, while Russia has always had one: aggressive, revanchist and barbaric. And by the way, I would like to remind everyone that the first assault of Russia on the territorial integrity of Ukraine took place on the island of Tuzla in the Black Sea, set between the Black Sea and the Azov Sea. So if we trace this aggression back to its very origins, it was the Black Sea, the place where the first attempt of aggression began 20 years ago. So Russia did have a strategy. Every step of the way, Russia acted where the West doubted. When fear-driven cautiousness closed NATO doors to Ukraine and Georgia in 2008, Russia quickly responded with attacking both. Russia was becoming a maniac, but some leaders decided that the best strategy was to keep the maniac happy, including by keeping his potential victims defenseless. The upcoming NATO summit in Vilnius is the right time to correct mistakes of the past by taking resolute step forward on the path to Ukraine's NATO membership, to show that the door is not only open, but there is a clear plan on when and how Ukraine will enter it. I assume we all understand now that fear is not a strategy. It is time to work out a comprehensive security network for all nations on all the region that feel threatened by the maniac on the loose. It's time to turn Black Sea into what the Baltic Sea has become, a sea of NATO. This war has proven that the security of the region is indivisible. A threat to one is a threat to all. Missiles launched by Russia at Ukraine have threatened neighboring Poland, Romania and Moldova. Russian strikes on Ukraine's power grid provoked blackouts in Moldova. Millions of Ukrainians fled the war. And I take this opportunity to thank you, Bogdan, and your colleagues in the Romanian government and the people of Romania for embracing Ukrainian refugees. Trade routes were disrupted, and I equally thank you for playing an active role in keeping these routes of solidarity working to help bypass Russian blockade. Black Sea ecosystem was damaged. Russian-occupied Crimea keeps posing a threat to everyone. Today, Russia uses all of its hybrid tools to destabilize Moldova. We in Ukraine commend Maya Sandu's leadership in countering these attempts and reiterate Ukraine's resolute readiness to stand with Moldova. Together, we will thwart Russia's malicious plans to sow chaos and instability in our region. We need to address the common Russia problem together. For instance, I support the expert idea to integrate the air and missile defense systems of Ukraine with the ones of the Black and Baltic Sea NATO allies. It also makes sense for Ukraine to be part of the European Defense Initiative, and I've been raising this issue with Josep Borrell recently. All these steps are important now, but even more so after Ukraine liberates its territories. Ukraine's victory will be a victory for all of us. To bring this day closer, we need to have strategic endurance and take principled decisions. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today is the first anniversary of the sinking of the Moskva cruiser, an event that occurred in the Black Sea and enhanced Black Sea security in practice. The formula is simple. The less Russian military, the safer our region is. There will be a day when other Russian warships will follow in the same direction, one way or another. We are working to bring this day closer with the support of our friends and partners. April 13th also marks another sad anniversary. Exactly 9 years ago, Russian military groups that infiltrated Ukrainian Donbas spilled the first blood. On this day in 2014, a Russian Special Operations Group, led by an FSB veteran, attacked a group of Ukrainian officers near the city of Sloviansk. Ukraine's security service captain, 41-year-old Gennady Bilichenko, was killed on the spot, becoming the first combat victim of Russia's war in the Donbas. Back then, the Ukrainian forces still had an order to avoid opening fire because the common belief was that the war could still be averted. But when you are shot at, there is no other way than to shoot back. So a 29-year-old lieutenant, Vadim Sukharevsky, opened fire in return and deflected the attack. This moment set history in motion. Vadim is now 38, a colonel, a brigade commander decorated with the highest award, the Hero of Ukraine. He now leads units in the hottest spots of the front line. And I share this old story with you for two reasons. First, to remind that Russia's war on Ukraine started not last year, but 9 years ago. And second, to make the point that you can wish for peace, but you cannot pretend it's peace, especially when someone attacks you. We all want peace, but a just and lasting peace like the one envisioned by President Zelensky's peace formula, it's not only in Ukraine's, but in all of Europe's and the world's interests to see this formula implemented. If the history of the past century and the past decades is to teach us anything, it is that the world needs real peace, not appeasement. Real peace means restoring the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. Real peace means a safe homeland for the Tatar people in the Ukrainian Crimea. Real peace means grain ships in the Black Sea, not warships. A world under the rule of international law, rather than force, is what real peace means. That is what we are fighting for. This is what this conference is for. Not only to win the war, but to win a real lasting peace. If Russia keeps Crimea, once it has rebuilt its strengths, it will use it as a launch pad to invade Ukraine once again and take full control of the Black Sea. We will not allow this to happen. This is why we will liberate every inch of our territory and every last one of our fellow citizens. And that is why we are today calling for a demilitarization of the Black Sea, so that peaceful, law-abiding countries can once again use the shared sea to trade, travel, and live freely without fear of Russian warships. Let us persist on the way to this common goal. Thank you for your attention. I wish you very productive discussions today. I'm sorry I'm not in Bucharest today, and as I said yesterday to Bogdan, I owe you a visit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dmytro, and I'm looking forward to the visit to Bucharest. And I have now the pleasure to invite my colleague and friend, the Romanian Defense Minister, Mr. Angel Tâlvăr, our co-host, to give his introductory remarks. Minister, thank you so much for the excellent collaboration between our institutions, for the preparation of this event, and for hosting us in this beautiful historical building. Angel, ai cuvântul.
Mulțumesc, Bogdan. Thank you. Dear ministers, honorable speakers, distinguished guests, dear friends, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you here in Bucharest at the National Military Club to debate an issue that has always been of strategic importance for us and which has gained even more relevance in the current geopolitical and geostrategic realms, the security of the Black Sea region. We are meeting at a crucial time. It is the first International Black Sea Security Conference under the aegis of the International Crimea Platform. It is a real honor to having here in Bucharest for the first time Minister Reznikov since the war of aggression started last year in February. I truly believe that, as many world stage experts stated, we should look at the Black Sea as the strategic center of gravity. Europe faces the most complex and unpredictable security dynamics in decades. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine has brought back full-scale conventional war on our continent. The aggressive actions of Russia have increased insecurity in the Euro-Atlantic space and negatively impacted the rules-based international order and the global security. We have been talking about notions such as inflection point or historical crossroad. Whatever we call it, while the international order is being reshaped, we must recognize the key role of the Black Sea. The importance of the Black Sea is acknowledged both in the NATO strategic concept as well as within the EU strategic compass. The region is marked for 3 decades already by significant security risks and challenges, including protracted conflicts, the build-up of the aggressive military posture of Russia, hybrid actions, and not least the weaponization of the economic and energy instruments. Last year, on February 24th, the international democratic community witnessed the true intentions of Russia, which decided to start a full-scale invasion of a sovereign, independent nation. They believe that Ukraine is not a state, that it is a place without a nation, but that was a terrible mistake. In the 414th day of this brutal war of aggression, the brave Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian armed forces demonstrated that they are a true nation determined to protect every inch of their territory. Romania stood aside our neighbor and partner since day one. Russia failed in dividing us, and it also failed in achieving its military and strategic goals. The international support offered to Ukraine has been a game changer, and we consider that we need to continue to sustain Ukraine as long as it will be necessary. After more than 1 year of war, if we look at the situation on the front, we see that Russia struggles to preserve territories illegally occupied, and Ukraine is making progresses in liberating the occupied territories. Over more than 1 year of ruthless fighting, Ukraine has achieved remarkable and encouraging success on the front lines. Bakhmut front remains an important focus of the war. The fighting in and around the city has been the most violent of recent months. But as NATO Secretary General said, we must not underestimate Russia. The objective of this conference is to raise awareness and to demonstrate once more our unity. Dear friends, I hope this conference, which gathers statesmen, diplomats and experts in the security and defense related fields, will be both interesting and edifying in profiling the Black Sea as what it is, a region of massive strategic relevance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for your opening address. And I have now the pleasure to invite the fourth co-host, Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksiy Reznikov, to deliver his opening remarks. Oleksiy, you have the floor.
Dear Ministers, dear distinguished participants of this Black Sea Security Conference, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my deep appreciation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, the Minister of National Defense of Romania, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, my friend of mine, Dmytro Kuleba, and also Defense Strategic, Ukraine, for organizing this important event, not only for Ukraine, but the whole Black Sea region and Europe. And as you know, a year ago, on this day, Ukrainian Navy forces hit the Russian flag warship cruiser Moskva. And it became very important and famous dive site in the Black Sea. I believe this is a good symbol of today's event and guarantee of productive work. More than 400 days ago, Russia started a full-scale invasion that has killed thousands, forced millions to flee their homes, reduced entire cities to rubble, and caused a military conflict on a scale that Europe hasn't seen for the last 80 years. The invasion made it obvious for European countries that food is used as a weapon, energy is used as a weapon. And the war spreads its influence far beyond the borders of actual hostilities. Violation by the aggressor of all existing principles of international law and order requires that we reconsider the critical aspects of regional security. This is in the best interest of every country in the region. We cannot rely on the practice we used until recently they failed. Ukraine is open to this conversation, but unity of efforts of the free world, we will ensure the return of the world of the rule of law, not the rule of force, and will make the Black Sea the space of peace. Thank you very much.
I thank you, Minister, for your remarks, and please allow me to, at my turn, to congratulate you for the courage and resilience of your women and men defending your country in such a brave way, but also for the core values that you are protecting. And now, let me express also my gratitude to all of you who have been traveling to Bucharest for attending this event, but also for those who are online with us or who will present their messages via VTC. Our event is basically highlighting the strategic importance of the Black Sea region, and the aim is to chart the way forward. So I hope that we will be able together today, during our debates, to send a very strong message of unity and solidarity. Before proceeding further with the next panel, I would like to indicate a couple of organizational details. I would like to invite my fellow ministers and heads of delegations to join us to a family photo, which will take place in about 15 minutes in front of the main stairs. We need this technical break in order for the colleagues for the media to prepare their cameras. And then, by that moment, please join me into the holding room in order to wait for the family photo to be ready. And then the next panel will start according to the program. Thank you. Câte locuri sunt? Nu mă mai întrebați pe mine, vorbiți cu Teodor, vă rog.
Băi, vezi să nu dai.
Andrei, ajută-mă să...
Astea sunt, da? Uite, Peter, Simona,
Nu, ei nu
Anatolie.
stau în care. Măi, fii atent, Shaping Green e de la Pupitu. Mă nebunești. Shaping Green e de la Pupitu.
Nu avem de unde selecționa.
Nu, dar cum măi, cum Shaping Green e de la
Nu a vorbit nimeni detaliile astea cu mine, nici măcar nu trebuia să mă ocup de ele, ok? Dăm jos.
Facem altfel. Facem altfel. Dacă am pus asta, eu nu le mai pot. Să stea și Shaping Green.
Da, de ce nu? Și să stea în extreme sau unde îi punem?
Da. Deci avem 6 persoane. Da, extrem. Invitatul acolo, nu, gazda aici, invitatul acolo.
Pune tu. Pune înainte de apă. The guests will be on that side. Yeah, but they will have a seat here. Da, 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 le punem aici.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start our first panel. Please take your seats. And we encourage the panelists to take the stage. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, experts, journalists, we are so happy to see all of you, and let me reiterate the gratitude that came from a minister for participation for each of all of you, because the Crimea platform architecture has been today accomplished. Let me remind you, when Ukraine started to push for the Crimea platform, it was not obvious that it will be successful. We heard so many skeptical voices about that it would not be supported by countries, but today the Crimea platform is the initiative that unites more than 60 states, nation states and international organizations under one simple goal: to deoccupy the sovereign territory of Ukraine, which is the Crimean Peninsula. And let me state that with this Black Sea Conference, we have accomplished the whole architecture when the Crimea platform is today operated on the government level, leaders level, when we had the inaugural summit back in August 2021, captained by President Zelensky, the Parliament Summit and the Parliament level that we had in Zagreb in Croatia, and we are so thankful to our Croatian friends for hosting this summit, the expert layer, the expert domain, and today the, I hope, regular Black Sea Security Conference that has again one aim: to accomplish the strategic vision of what we can jointly do at the Black Sea region. Dear guests, I'm also happy to say that there is a huge hope of those who live in Crimea, and as I represent the Crimean Tatar indigenous people, and these are 15-16% of the Crimean population, and the Crimean Tatars have been boycotting the very so-called illegal referendum, and many Ukrainians and people in Crimea, they do have hope. And this event is yet another signal that goes to Crimea, and by the way, it's been closely followed by those who inhabit Crimea, as the mark that the world has not forget Crimea, that the world is fighting for the liberation of Crimea. And as my minister said, if you hear any doubt about the attempt or the eagerness of Ukraine to liberate Crimea, it would not be the case, because there is a unanimous vision of Ukrainian people to liberate the territory. Unfortunately, after the temporary occupation of Crimea in 2014, Russia heavily militarized the peninsula. Crimea has become a military base for Russia, a tool for power projection in the Black Sea and Azov Sea, and also in the Middle East. The resort, which annually welcomed people from different cultures, from different countries, a place that boasts an incredible wealth of culture treasures, historical significance, diversity, and breathtaking natural resources and wonders, became a place for persecution, for political views, for ethnic features and religious beliefs. Democratic freedoms on the peninsula were eradicated. For 9 years, approximately 200 people became political prisoners of the Kremlin, most of them are Crimean Tatars, for nothing.
We are determined to regain our land and achieve complete deoccupation of all territories of Ukraine temporarily occupied by Russia, including the city of Sevastopol, with the help of our allies, thus restoring the security architecture in the region. To this end, we initiated the International Crimea Platform as a tool, and it's a very solemn moment that today we finalize this architecture. Let me introduce our distinguished panel discussion speakers, and again express my gratitude for your distinguished participation. These are Anatoly Nasati, Minister of Defense of the Republic of Moldova, Arvydas Anušauskas, Minister of Defense of Lithuania, my dear friend Maria Picinovic-Buric, Secretary General of the Council of Europe and a very dedicated person to the Crimean issues, Parliamentary Vice Minister Cynthia Müller, Federal Ministry of Defense of Germany. And then we will also have several messages and shape an intro. But before we go in the shape an intro and the introduction of those who would do that, let us watch 2.5 video that would bring you as a flashback to what we had in Crimea in 2014. Let us watch the video.
After days on a razor's edge, Ukraine is now a nation at war.
Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine.
In February 2014, Russia temporarily occupies the Crimean Peninsula. Crimea is turned into one huge military base. Russia blocks the Kerch Strait. International trade through the ports of the Sea of Azov is blocked. Movement of armed forces to the Mediterranean area, primarily to Syria. Would-be nuclear weapons are being deployed. Nuclear infrastructure is being actively restored and developed. During all these years, Russia felt impunity. Massive missile strikes on the entire territory of Ukraine are launched from ships in the Black Sea. There are no more safe zones on the water or in the air. 9 of the top 10 global container lines have suspended operations in the Black Sea region. The rapid fall in direct connections to the Black Sea area has affected global logistics and amplified critical port congestion in Europe. A decrease in the export of agricultural products from Ukraine affects food security and increases the risk of new conflicts. Russia's use of ships with disabled transponders fuels the shadow economy and endangers ship traffic in the entire water area. Sea mines which have been discovered near the coast of Bulgaria, Georgia, Romania and Turkey over the past year pose a threat to both sea vessels and people. Russia violates international maritime law. Aggression has environmental consequences. Dolphins are dying en masse. The air pollution is rising, and the development of renewable energy projects is halted. The system that ensured the safety of the Black Sea no longer works. It is our duty to restore peace and tranquility to the Black Sea. The deoccupation of Crimea and the establishment of a new security architecture is the only possible path for humanity. Enough with the talk. Take action.
So enough with the talk, take action, but we actually continue our conversation and dialogue, and I have the honor to introduce and to give the floor to our 2 distinguished experts who would make a shape an intro. And the first one is Mr. Van Praag, who is the president of the Halifax International Security Forum. Please, the stage is yours.
Minister, distinguished officers, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. My name is Peter Van Praag. I'm the president of the Washington, D.C. based HFX, an organization that I started 15 years ago in the aftermath of Russia's invasion of Georgia, with the mission to improve cooperation among the world's democracies. We convene Halifax International Security Forum each November. And as someone with some experience bringing people together, I want to thank Ukraine and Romania, Alina Frolova, and everyone at the Center for Defense Strategies and the Crimea Platform for bringing us together for this important and timely conference. Your non-paper on Black Sea security is important, and I urge everybody to read it. I know that we will look forward to continuing our cooperation together. This morning, I am going to make 3 simple points that might help shape today's conversation about lessons learned for the democratic world. 1, acknowledge where we are. The Black Sea region that we are here to discuss, and as a result, the entire world, are in a much stronger position today than on February 24th, 2022. The world and the region are stronger because Russia is weaker. We cannot acknowledge this significant development in global strategic affairs without acknowledging and indeed thanking Ukraine. On February 24th, 2022, a new era for the entire world, not just the Black Sea region, began. Putin's Russia launched a full-scale invasion of its smaller neighbor, Ukraine, and Ukraine fought back. President Zelensky inspired his nation to defy, to resist, to survive, to win. Counter to the conventional narrative that still lingers in Western capital cities, it was not Russia's attack on Ukraine that brought unity of purpose to the Allies. No, it was Ukraine's defiance. It was Ukraine's sacrifice. It was Ukraine's fight that gave the United States, Canada, the European Union, NATO, and all the Allies unity of purpose. In many real ways, Ukraine saved not only itself, Ukraine saved all of us. Had Ukraine surrendered, as some European leaders urged President Zelensky to do, it's not difficult to imagine where we would be now. A much weakened Europe, a divided NATO, a humbled America, all confronting an empowered Russia backed by a smiling Xi Jinping in China. The Black Sea could have become a Russian pond. That is not where we are. Quite the opposite. Because of Ukrainian sacrifice, Ukrainian courage, and Ukrainian ingenuity, the era that began on February 24th, 2022 now has the potential to be the most positive era yet for freedom and democracy. If we needed reminding, President Zelensky's Ukraine taught us all over again, our democracies are worth saving. Our democracies are worth fighting for. And we must be indebted to every single Ukrainian, all of whom are heroes, for reminding us of this fundamental truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. It's just one thing that I wanted to say, that we are strong because Russia is weak, as you said, but I think Russia is weak only because we united our effort and performed our united strength. Thank you, Peter.
It's modest of you.
Yeah.
2, acknowledge past mistakes. Last week marked 15 years since the 2008 Bucharest NATO summit. At that time, I had the privilege of organizing the accompanying conference that took place in this room. President Bush addressed the conference 3 hours before the official proceedings began and announced officially only then that he supported MAP, the Membership Action Plan to eventually join NATO for Ukraine and Georgia. The very next day, that American initiative was rejected by Merkel's Germany and Sarkozy's France and other allies. 7 months before Obama was elected US president, this was the low point for American influence in the world. And Putin invaded Georgia in August. Putin invaded Ukraine in 2014, and Putin launched full-scale invasion last year. A lot of factors went into rejecting MAP for Ukraine and Georgia, not least of all America's misguided invasion of Iraq 5 years earlier. Still, not giving MAP was a huge strategic error, and it, and every other mistake in this region, including neglecting the Black Sea region, and those errors made by Mr. Bush's successors at the White House, needs to be acknowledged by the actors and nations who made them. It is the only and best way to avoid the same mistakes going forward. 3, win the war. Aggression against sovereign states and crimes against humanity were defeated in Europe in the middle of the 20th century. There is no good reason that aggression and crimes against humanity should not be defeated in Europe in the first half of the 21st century. Simply put, Putin needs to fail. And defeating the evil that is coming out of Russia means Ukraine reclaiming all of its territory, including all of Crimea. It is not talked about much, but it is not insignificant for me to tell you that beating German Nazism led directly to getting rid of segregation, the institutional racism that existed in the United States until the 1960s. After fighting and dying to stop institutional racism in Europe, Americans could no longer defend such blatant racism at home. However, in 1945, when the war ended, nobody imagined that ending segregation in the United States would be a result of victory in Europe. I say that, I recount that, to emphasize the point that good things happen when the good guys win wars. Many of those good things won't and can't be predicted at this time. At this time, nearly every person, and certainly every institution, can't imagine what the world and the region will be like after victory, with a severely diminished Russian Federation. Collectively, we simply aren't creative enough to imagine that future world just yet. But it is coming. And that future world is coming. And what we can predict is that Ukraine will emerge from this war as the strongest land power in Europe. And now, the Black Sea region will benefit from Ukraine's warfighting experience and education as it develops a post-victory strategy to ensure that Russia cannot threaten its neighbors ever again. The post-war strategy must include special roles and responsibilities for Ukraine and its NATO Black Sea partners, Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey. Beginning immediately after victory, Black Sea states and international stakeholders need to coordinate to demine. Simultaneously, a post-war strategy that keeps Russian warships out of the Black Sea forever needs to be devised and acted upon. It is late, but not too late, for all the allies and stakeholders to get on the same page with a unified vision for winning the war. Let's do that now. If I have to make one prediction today, let it be this: that Europe itself will soon come to realize that Europe, whole, free, and at peace, will only happen when Ukraine is whole, free, and at peace, and Moldova, and Georgia. Thanks to Ukraine, there is a lot to be optimistic about in this region, but there is a lot of work to do, and today's conversations are an important part. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. All of your 3 points have been well taken when it comes to the acknowledge where we are, the nuclear in Bucharest 2008 huge strategic arrow, and win the war. Thank you so much. And the next shaping speaker is Madam Simona Cojocaru. She's the State Secretary of Ministry of Defense of Romania. The stage is yours, Madam.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished audience, dear friends, a very good morning in Bucharest to all. This first panel focuses on topics that are central to our security. Let me take this opportunity to say, as we do with fervent regularity, that we must be aware of the fact that what happens in the Black Sea does not stay in the Black Sea. The wide-ranging security evolutions have implications at a larger scale. We share common concerns and we should seek opportunities. Let me thank for your presence here for the first edition of the Black Sea Conference under Crimea platform. It's important to stay united. It is about lessons learned, this panel. The lessons learned from the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine from different perspectives. A lessons learned discussion is a strong tool to drive improvement within our joint efforts in providing security and stability for the Black Sea area. When we think about lessons learned from the war in Ukraine, our understanding implies both positive and negative outcomes, a very thorough analysis of the military operational tactical aspects as well as strategies in conducting the war and the impact of regional Euro-Atlantic and global order. Successes and failures should be taken into consideration. The price for liberty and freedom is again important to be assessed, along with the destruction and suffering caused by the war. More than a year since, in a blatant disregard of the basic international fundamental principles of international law, Russia invaded a sovereign state, an independent state, Ukraine, destroying cities, shattering peaceful communities, and killing innocent people. The international response was prompt, helping Ukraine to resist this brutal aggression and build the capacity to self-defend and to conduct counter-offensive to retake the illegally annexed territories. One of the first lessons is that Ukraine have proved massively resilient. Another lessons might make reference to patriotism, self-dedication, self-sacrifice, and Ukraine is indeed a case in point. It is notable that another lesson learned could include a significant and calibrated military capacity. Moreover, we are witnessing the importance, the value, and the power of international community, either in regional, international formats, individual countries, or entities. But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we have to make sure that the power of support increases in terms of volume and actors involved, so as to reach a level that deters the use of aggressive force against another state in the international arena. The international community cannot favor by any means the use of brute force as an arbiter. The only force that we should breed and make the arbiter is the force of law and the force of right. In front of this absurd war of aggression of the Russian Federation in Ukraine, supporting Ukraine has become, indeed, very clearly, very strongly, a global effort. In addition, both the EU and NATO member states have passed a difficult exam throughout this more than 1 year war, with important lessons learned also for these organizations, to the common efforts to strengthen the security and stability of the Euro-Atlantic community. We have declared many times that Black Sea matters. 2022 NATO strategic concept adopted in Madrid last June, which underscored the vital importance of the Black Sea region for the security of the Euro-Atlantic area, is the fundamental blueprint of the alliance. The Black Sea is there, very well emphasized. This is one region where aggressive Russia is using its military force against liberty, against freedom of navigation, to impose its vision of a new world order. The Black Sea is an area where the risk of further severe escalations and aggressive maneuvers by Russia remains high. That is why we must showcase a strong resolve. Yes, NATO strategic concept stated also very clearly that Russia today is the most significant and direct threat to alliance security. Moscow is using the Black Sea as a platform to impede, as I said, the freedom of navigation, fueling tensions in the region, including through protracted conflicts, including generating gray zones and creating favorable conditions for transnational security threats. Its main objectives are to maintain regional instability, impact the free will of our partners in choosing their future, while projecting force in the Mediterranean Sea towards the Middle East and beyond. As geography shows, the Azov Sea is also intimately related to the Black Sea. Depending how you look at it, that sea is either the antechamber or the last room of the Black Sea. So the potential of the Black Sea is never fulfilled without the Azov Sea. Therefore, we see them in tandem and take measures appropriately. As a consequence, the involvement of main relevant actors, NATO and EU, should elevate both the Black Sea and Azov Sea regions and its associated problems at the right political level, so the timely and calibrated political decisions to be taken and other means to be generated and employed. Looking around the globe, another theme, another topic in the first panel, one cannot hide from seeing there are problems that need attention and brings new urgency to solving them. The terrorism in all its shapes and forms, malicious cyber attacks and widespread disinformation activities, challenges emanating from the South, such as migration, human rights abuses, all of these are domains to be looked very carefully. All these threats and challenges have determined the creation of that arc of instability and insecurity, stretching from the Atlantic coast to Sahel, through North Africa, Middle East, Caucasus, and further to Indo-Pacific. These threats and challenges are likely to be exacerbated by a growing world population competing for ever scarcer resources, climate change, and ever-increasing rate of technological advances. Thus, ladies and gentlemen, things are going to be based on happening. Having said these considerations, I'm sure that we are going to benefit greatly from your knowledge and experience of all distinguished panelists today. At the end of the day, I think the most important lessons learned is that Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, is a winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simona. So now we have 1 hour, 15 minutes for the panel discussion, and the discussion itself will be dedicated to the name of the panel, which is the Lessons Learned Full-Scale Invasion of the Russian Federation in Ukraine and its multidimensional impact for the democratic world. And the first word I would love to give to the Defense Minister of Moldova, Mr. Nosatый, for actually commenting where we are when it comes to the threats
and what are the lessons learned, and moreover, what should we do with these lessons learned? What will be the practical dimension of those lessons learned? Please take your microphone. Yes, you can speak from your place here.
Thank you. Дякую. Can you hear? Let's try this one. Okay, it's working. Дякую, шановні пані. Dear ministers, honorable audience, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to stick to the time that's been allocated, no more than 3 minutes, and focus mainly on the lesson learned from the war in Ukraine. The 24th of February 2022 became a major impact upon the paradigm of the security order based on international rules established by United Nations in 1945, as well as OSCE principles established in 1990s, which overall become major challenges for entire international community. In fact, the Republic of Moldova has immediately felt the collateral and spillover effects from the full-scale, unprovoked, and unjustifiable war in Ukraine. In this regard, we express gratitude to our partners for timely shared information that allowed us, Moldovan Authority, to better prepare plans and actions to mitigate the threats and manage many crises situations we all together witnesses. As a lesson learned from the last year crisis management, we came of several conclusions. First, international partnership based on the solidarity principles have to be enhanced with the aim to upgrade interstate interconnectivity and interoperability to allow synchronization of joint international effort and response actions to mitigate different crises such as refugee, logistical, traffic, that we, Moldova, expressed in 2022 and even now. Second, the topic that already been addressed in the previous speeches is regarding the airspace. The cooperation need to be enhanced to better achieve the principles of deterrence, early warning, denial, and air defense. Another point is international partnership that has to develop and rehearse in advance different contingency planning based on the preventive strategies and mitigating measures to allow not only national crisis response systems to react, but also to have a joint international crisis response reaction. Fourth, the concept of national resilience that already been mentioned today has to be enhanced and synchronized with international cooperative security efforts. Since the effects of the war, it has multiple collateral and spillover effects for the entire region. Such joint efforts have to be amplified by combating disinformation, strategic communication, cybersecurity response, as well security and defense culture developments, which have to include international cooperative security principles. The fifth lesson learned that I would like to mention today is international community has to develop better international logistical capacity reaction, since the traffic of the logistic goods and traffic of the logistic peoples and goods from the Ukraine transiting Moldova, for example, during the last year, overwhelmed the national infrastructure and economic capacity to be sustained for a long period of time. Even in that challenging situation, I would like to mention about outstanding cooperation of the Moldovan and Romanian authorities in order to identify solutions to facilitate the traffic of the refugee, the transit of the goods, the transit of the grain in such difficult period of time. Of course, we express our gratitude to the international partners who supported our efforts with their experience and their recommendations, how better to achieve interoperability and interconnection of European Union system and logistics. And next lesson learned is related to the energy, economic, financial crises generated by the Russian war in Ukraine that recommend optimization and synchronization of the energetic, economic and financial system to achieve flexibility and to avoid disruption effects by creating international complex interdependence. Last, ladies and gentlemen, that I would like to mention, apart from the military effects, the war in Ukraine revealed that other challenges such as transnational organized crime, transnational illegal immigration, and hidden subversive action designed to destabilize the nation and the region security that impacted the Republic of Moldova. Therefore, to timely react on such threats and challenges, we need to achieve better international and national coordination to have synchronized crisis response mechanism based on sharing of information and coordination of the joint action responses. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many other effects, lessons learned, and recommendations that have been identified through the last period of time. Many time, one lesson become definitely priority. Our common strength has to be based on the international partnership with common shared values and principles of solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anatoly, for your contribution. The only remark that I have, that you have up to 7 minutes for your remarks, because there is a small change. We were supposed to have 3 rounds of questions, but now it's combined. So please, you will have 1 round of questions and your remarks. So the next speaker is Mr. Arvydas Anušauskas, Minister of Defense of Lithuania. Please, the floor is yours.
Sorry, as a former professor, I will feel
feel free yourself.
Better here. Yeah. Dear ministers, ambassadors, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to be in this important forum. Thank you, Romania, for continuing the Crimea platform tradition and for hosting this event. Lessons from wars are learned over the time, and I am sure the historians will do their job. But in our case, we do not have time. We must move forward. Just last week, I returned from Kharkiv. I clearly saw 2 things. Firstly, Ukrainians believe in victory and any cost. Secondly, I clearly realized that time is of the essence. Each day counts for the security of Ukraine and our own. In Vilnius, we fully realize that European security depends on the end of this war. Even after the war, Russia threats will remain. To all of us, be us in the Black Sea or Baltic region, NATO summit in Vilnius is coming soon. In Vilnius, we must send a strong message to Ukraine of the prospect of its membership. We cannot just repeat the same line as in Bucharest summit. I believe that stronger, assurances and commitments should be given to Ukraine. Right now, we have to do everything for Ukraine to win. In this context, we must combine political and practical tracks. Firstly, our united and constant support for Ukraine is any political format. And in the communication with our societies is crucial. People worry about gas prices, jobs, inflation. I fully understand this. It is our job to explain to our public why supporting Ukraine is more important. Ukraine should never feel alone. We should not get tired in any sense. Secondly, we must stay focused on practical support, not only for this year, but for many years to come. And it is not only military equipment support, but also training, service, and repairs, cybersecurity, economic resilience. Our goal it is make Ukraine as much NATO as it can be. Ukraine must be ready for membership as Finland was. On the Ukraine side, we need Ukraine's commitments to proceed with establishing democratic control of the armed forces and the adoption of the Western military decision-making process and integration into NATO structures. It is a huge challenge in the wartime, but I know from Alexei Reznikov and other friends that Ukraine is up to the task. At the end of the day, NATO will be stronger with Ukraine. Through the bloodshed and courage the Ukrainians have given us time to strengthen our own defense. At NATO, we must take this opportunity. This means, firstly, the implementation of Madrid summit decisions, reinforcements of forward defense, and deterrence in eastern flank, in particular in the Baltic because of geographical situation. Just remember the Russia recent decision to deploy nuclear weapons in Belarus minutes before Vilnius summit. Secondly, it is also important to ensure air defense coverage from the Nordic Baltic region to the Black Sea region. Lithuania itself invests into such capabilities too. Thirdly, at Vilnius, we must commit to increase NATO defense spending and make a long-term pledge for investment. Lithuania has already revised defense budget up to 2.5% of GDP. And this is not the limit. It is important to continue investing in the innovation and modernization of the armed forces. Fourthly, we need long-term contract with defense industries. We need industrial mobilization for ourselves and for Ukraine. Today, we are dealing with extremely dangerous terrorist Putin. Ukraine will win, I have no doubt about it, We must hold Putin and this regime accountable for the war crimes committed in Ukraine. Justice must prevail, and it will. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, dear Aridas. Ukrainians do not reject your kind suggestion to be NATO'd, with pleasure. So the next speaker will be with us online, and it's the Sweden Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tobias Billström. Let us first technically solve the issue, and I hope that everything's going to be smooth. Mr. Tobias? Hello, dear Minister. Can you hear us? But we can't hear you. Could you please fix the technical team? Yes, now we can hear you. Please, Minister, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first and foremost express my admiration for the Ukrainian people, who have shown incredible strength in defending their homeland and the core principles of international law against the Russian aggression. It is truly impressive to witness the Ukrainian resolve in defending their freedom in face of hardship when confronted with Russia's crimes. The choice of the people of Ukraine is one of democracy, rule of law, and respect for fundamental rights. Ukraine is part of our European family. Ukrainians have expressed their wish for a future within the European Union, and we have acknowledged that by giving Ukraine the status of candidate country. The swift and decisive European Union response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine is a manifestation of EU strength when we act together. The Swedish presidency of the EU will continue to prioritize political, financial, military and humanitarian support for Ukraine, as well as support for Ukraine's path towards EU membership. For Sweden, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has led to a political paradigm shift. NATO membership and a heavy rearmament of Swedish defense are immediate consequences of this. The Black Sea region is of high strategic security value and geopolitical significance as a bridge between Europe, Asia and the Middle East, as well as through its importance in terms of military defense, food security, energy and connectivity. Security concerns in the Black Sea are clear. About 90% of all freight transports in and out of Sweden takes place by sea. Sea routes and ports are of central strategic importance, and we can relate to the challenges states in the Black Sea region are facing. If operations were to stop or be blocked for a longer period of time, there would be extensive consequences. As future NATO member, we will contribute to our allies' security needs in a full 360-degree perspective. This includes maritime security, where the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea share important characteristics. And I want to reiterate Sweden's intention with the incident contingency for Estonia, for Latvia, for Lithuania, through NATO's Baltic air policing. We are also prepared to assist in NATO's air policing in the Black Sea and in Iceland. 9 years after the violent, illegal annexation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol by the Russian Federation, Sweden remains steadfast in our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Russia must cease its aggression and withdraw its troops from the entire territory of Ukraine. We will never recognize the illegal attempt to annex Ukrainian territories, including Crimea. Crimea remains a priority from an international security perspective, and Sweden confirms our readiness to increase efforts to further strengthen the activities carried out within the framework of the International Crimea Platform, with the aim of reversing the illegal annexation of Crimea, including through adopting further restrictive measures against Russia. I would like to wrap up by mentioning Russia's extensive attempts to disrupt the states in the Black Sea region. It is clear that Russia is trying to destabilize Moldova and undermine its pro-European government. Increased support to Moldova is crucial for strengthening resilience and for protecting its democracy. Our unity remains our most important asset, and we must continue to work together to counter disinformation and attacks on our free democratic societies. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I regret I was not able to be with you in person today, and I will shortly have to leave for another engagement, but my ambassador will continue to participate in the remainder of today's conference on my behalf. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Billström. And the next speaker is Madam Maria Pejcinovic-Buric, the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Please, you either take the stage or, yeah. We have a choice.
Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start with the remark that you, Emine, made at the outset of your introduction, saying that in what relates our umbrella, the Crimea platform for this conference, that some were skeptical. I can reassure you that the Council of Europe was not skeptical. When the invitation came from Minister Kuleba, I think early 2021, I certainly was one of the first to respond positively. And secondly, when going there, still with Russian Federation part of the Council of Europe, well, that was a bold thing to do for the Council of Europe. But I had no doubt that whatever, we need to be there, and we are very proud to continue to be there. So no skepticism at all, and I'm happy to see Crimean platform evolving. And let me remind that we work on an annual report that we take stock of the human rights situation in the occupied autonomous region of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, recording what the situation is there, and that happens based on different evidence that we can gather, including talking to people who are in Crimea. And let me remind you that one of those steps before this horrible war of aggression started was that later that year, end of 2021, we together went, and that was yet another confirmation of our support to reintegrating Crimea and the city of Sevastopol to what are the internationally recognized borders of the Ukraine. We went together to ABL in the Chaplinka, the region of Kherson, and already end of 2021 it was quite clear that getting there was not without a risk. I remember vividly we were flying with a helicopter when we were getting closer to there, because that was the only way how to do it in one day. And I remember that the helicopter was flying very, very high. So that all was a sign of worrying. Second, you know, the topic of this conference and the main interlocutors are defense experts. And you know, when this invitation came to the Council of Europe, I just thought, well, defense is the only area that is explicitly excluded in the statute of the Council of Europe, in the Treaty of London, not to be treated by the Council of Europe. But however, there is an important thing for the Council of Europe to do there, which is security, meaning democratic security, which is integral part of any security in all parts of the world. So let me start with saying that the Council of Europe, of course, promotes democratic security among the member states, including every country around the Black Sea, apart, obviously, from Russia, which we excluded from the organization last year. And let me remind you that we were the first and the only, so far, the international organization to have done so. Because of its illegal aggression against Ukraine, where together with now our 46 member states, we set European standards in human rights, democracy, and the rule of law to ensure what, again, the statute of the Council of Europe says, the greater unity that in turn underpins peace on our continent. But that peace requires member states to meet the commitments that they have undertaken, and which in turn requires political will. Seems very easy when you are saying it, but to get to it, it really needs a leadership and commitment for each and every player in the respective countries. So Russia did not lose that will all of a sudden last February, and this is one of the lessons learned, and you referred to it at your speech, what we learned. We certainly learned that in the future we have to take not only note, but to take action before. And actually, really, and that was meant and said by several interlocutors today, starting with Minister Kuleba, with Emine and others, it really, this war of aggression started 9 years ago, and it continues. So it was taken piece by piece over years. The occupation of Crimea and Sevastopol was one terrible moment in that timeline. The aggression that began last year is certainly the bloodiest. We cannot force now Russia to meet the standards of modern civilization to which its Black Sea neighbors are committed. But we are here to help the neighbors, all those neighbors, so that they can promote democratic security in their own countries and between one another. And I think both are crucial and important. So this includes our specific resolute support for Ukraine, our joint action plan for resilience, recovery, and reconstruction, our efforts to help meet the needs of Ukrainian refugees seeking safety in our other member states, and our determination that the ongoing violence ends, and this is what is important now, in a just peace. And with accountability, someone just mentioned accountability, at its heart. So that is why we are supporting the Ukrainian Prosecutor General investigations into serious human rights violations since early March last year, and why I have proposed, and now I come to what was one of the lessons learned, to come from the speaking, from the words to the action. So we are working to set up a register of damage. At this moment, the war is ongoing, but there is one thing that we know. There are victims, the victims are falling every day, and we need a victim-centered approach. And this is to have a place where all these people now, here and now, can start depositing for the damage that was done, for injury or loss. Because if we wait for too long, some of these things that are very important for the accountability when the moment comes, and it is coming for Russian Federation to pay for what they are doing still, we need to have witness, we have to need an evidence which can be used. And the register would be the first legal step in accountability. And I hope we will have it at our 4th summit of heads of state and government next month. And finally, we hope that this register will pave the way to a compensation mechanism that certainly will only make sense if the second phase, which is a commission for the compensation, and the third, which is the fund, how to nurture the compensation mechanism, is established. But that is for the time to come to work on that. The terrible reality is what is happening in not only in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and city of Sevastopol. Now we have all these things happening all around the place. And I think if there is one lesson learned, is that we need to be aware, we need to speak up, We need to go to the places. I was last week in the village of Yagodine, and in the region of Chernigov. And really, I mean, you can read about it, but if you go to the cave where 365 people were held in 200 square meters for 27 days without the right to get out, with a baby of 1.5 month old, to elders, and 11 of them died over there. Then if you are there, you really see what the Council of Europe, European Convention for Human Rights in Article 3 forbids in all conditions during the war and any other, which is prohibiting torture and inhuman and degrading treatment. And what you see there is exactly that. So once you see that, if you ever had any doubt about what kind of war, what is the real nature of this war, I think you will then know it for sure. So I think getting to these places, acknowledging the things, and working on that this war, that Ukraine wins this war, I think everyone who have this insight will never doubt whether the Crimea or any part of Ukraine has to be part of that. And we all have a word to say, and we all have a role to play in that. And I'm sure that from our side, we will deliver first thing as this register of damage, and continue to work with Ukraine and with all allies and friends as long as it takes to win this war. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, as well as to your recent visit a couple of weeks ago to Ukraine and your personal reflection on what you've seen there. But while you were talking, we had from someone's phone the alarm, which says that the alarm is over Ukraine with the threat of missile or drone attacks, which is another reminder of that we are unsafe here while millions of Ukrainians are not safe there, just in several hundreds of kilometers. The next speaker, I'm happy to announce, Madam Zintje Möller, who is the Parliamentary State Secretary, Federal Ministry of Defense of Germany. Please, the floor is yours. You either could speak up from the stage or from the place.
No, I'd like to be.
Okay.
I'd like to remain seated. Thanks for having me. First of all, warm regards from my minister, Boris Pistorius, Defense Minister of Germany, and I'm very happy to be able to represent him here. He's visiting our troops in Mali and Niger at the moment, so he's busy, but he sends at the same time his warmest regards. Everybody knows that Germany is a strong supporter of Ukraine in these war times that we selected and that we chose the side we stand on. And the side is at Ukraine, because Ukraine is not only fighting for themselves, a very heroic war, but it's fighting for, as Peter and also Simona pointed out, is fighting for a bigger purpose than the country itself. So it's not only about military action and a war, full-scale, full-fledged war in Ukraine. It's about the free world against imperialistic aggression, about an empire, a self-selected empire, to think that it could shape the world to their better, and it's against, or is it the world of democratic countries, it's the international rules-based orders, international organizations, international law that will in the end live up. And this is why we stand that strong with Ukraine, supporting in different dimensions. In military it means in artillery, air defense, heavy fighting vehicles, engineering such as bridges, equipment training, but also standing very strong in our alliances, so to support Ukraine on the first hand. But of course, it's something much bigger. It's something that Peter mentioned. It's a strong era for democracy. You said a strong era for a time for democracy and freedom, because Ukraine is fighting, that is showing that it's worth fighting for freedom and democracy. So that is something that we can learn, and that is why we stand that strong at your side. And in this heroic times that we live in, you are really fighting a war and standing up for values that we all share and that we all before maybe took for granted quite effortlessly, and we now know that we have to do something for it. So talking about lessons learned is not only standing at the side of Ukraine, because it's for democracy and freedom in the end, for the security of ourselves and the world order that we believe that is the better. It's also about thinking how to, why Ukraine is still supported by a strong community of countries present also, for example, in this very platform here. My chancellor said unity is a value as such, because Russia didn't only want to get Ukraine, it wanted to shatter the world order, it wanted to shatter Europe, it wanted to shatter also the unity of the West. So the unity of the West is the value because we stood up together against this aggression, against this wish to shape the world order to the Russian perspective. That's why unity is a value. That's, for me, is one of the despite the fact that Peter mentioned that Ukraine showed all of us that democracy, freedom is worth fighting for, and that you can win and stand up against an imperialistic aggressor. The second lesson for me is that unity is the value as such, because only united we can stand against this aggression, only united we can support. The second lesson would be that if we think about democracy and democratic values, about democracies standing together at the side of Ukraine against the aggression of Russia, then it's also that we need the support of our publics, because we don't force our publics, we need the support for our actions by our publics. That's why we have to convince, that is why we have to talk about the purpose that was mentioned, we have to talk about values, we have to convince what democracy, what this freedom is all about, and that after decades of peaceful times in Europe, we cannot let this freedom and the security will not be guaranteed effortlessly as it has been maybe before. So this we have to, but to do this we need the support of our public. And the third lesson learned is that, of course, what we all have to face, that we need to invest heavily in security. That is why Chancellor Scholz, during his speech of Zeitenwende, announced a special fund for the Bundeswehr, because we all know that now we have to take more responsibility for ourselves, because it's no longer a theoretic threat at our borders. It's a real threat, and we have to show that we are able to deter and defend if it is needed, what hopefully never will come true. So then this is where we have to invest, not only material, also in personnel, also in structures, so that it's functioning in the end, that we all come to a function, efficient infrastructure and a structure of security, of all the security instruments that we have. That is what we're working on. That's also what we have to do at the same time, supporting Ukraine, building doing training, doing a lot of material, giving a lot of material to Ukrainian armed forces. And at the same time, we have to heavily invest in our Bundeswehr, which we do, and to restructure so that we fulfill what we told our NATO allies that we will, so that we stand up to our responsibility, that we have Ukraine, and that we at the same time guarantee the security to our people and to all the alliances that we are member of. So that's more or less our lessons learned. And as Chancellor Scholz and all our ministers, or the whole government and the majority of the German public says, we will stand at the side of Ukraine as long as it takes.
Thank you, Zymtia, for your reassurance of strong position in solidarity with Ukraine. And the next and final speaker before we go to the national statements is our Guatemala Foreign Minister, Mr. Mario Bucaro Flores. He will be with us.
Your Excellencies, Ministers and Secretaries.
He will be with us with the pre-recorded messages.
Your Excellencies, Ministers and Secretaries of Foreign Affairs, Your Excellencies, National Ministers of Defense, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the governments of Ukraine and Romania for the invitation extended to Guatemala to participate in this first Black Sea Conference held in the framework of the International Platform of Crimea. On behalf of the government of Guatemala, throughout this message, I want to reiterate my country's deep commitment and unrestricted support to the people and the government of Ukraine in the context of the large-scale and unjustified invasion committed by Russia, which has large proportions and implications for the Black Sea region and for the rest of the world. We reaffirm that sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity are fundamental elements of a state, and the unjustified and unprovoked aggression against another state is a violation of the principles held on the Charter of the United Nations. Within the framework of this conference, it is necessary to remember the undoubted need to guarantee fair and impartial accountability for the illegal occupation of Ukraine territory in the Crimea Peninsula and the surrounding waters. It is inconceivable that we're still witnessing the consequences of this war, from the illegal annexation by Russia of the territory of Crimea to the invasion of the rest of the Ukrainian territory, the occupation of the Black Sea territory, and the threat of closing its seaports endangers the world's food security, exposing the Ukrainian people to famine, social destabilization, and a massive immigration due to the invasion that goes against all the established principles on the Charter of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest lessons that we have learned since the Russian invasion of Crimea is that the acts of this invasion constitute a massive violation of human rights and international humanitarian law, for which the Russian Federation should be held internationally accountable. We cannot accept precedents of this kind to be accepted or ignored. In this sense, Guatemala supports the Special Court to trial the crime of aggression committed by the Russian Federation against Ukraine through an agreement between Ukraine and the United States to be able to make this possible. Also, we want to highlight the need to strengthen the cooperation of the international community to ensure the recovery of the security in the Black Sea and Azov region, guided by the respect of the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and international law. Guatemala, as a state respectful of international law and with deep pacifist vocation, will continue to strongly condemn any attack of aggression that violates international law. We also reiterate our full support for the people of Ukraine, asking everyone to be able to work closely so we can be able to achieve a peaceful agreement as soon as possible and to end this terrible war. Slava Ukraini. Muchísimas gracias.
Героям слава.
Your Excellencies, Ministers and Secretaries.
Thank you, Minister. Guatemala was one of the bravest countries in Latin America and the first one to actually join the Crimea platform and one of the biggest supporters now of this coordination platform. So very thankful for this strong contribution. And now we have some time for the national statements. We have 6. Those who are asking for that statement, and the first one in the first floor I will give to Mr. Ilir Tepelena, the Ambassador of the Republic of Albania to Romania. Please, could you give the microphone to our speaker? Oh. Okay, okay. Okay, I am very liberal moderator, please do.
So as Ambassador of Albania in Romania, I have several times the chance to be in this magnificent and historical building for joyful events. But today in this conference, we are far from celebrations. We have rather regrets and lessons learned. Today, we are having lessons learned from a war, from Russia's unprovoked, unjustified aggression against Ukraine. Unfortunately, this war continues to challenge Europe and global security. Everything in the horrible book of crimes is in this aggression. Attacks on civilian and energy-related infrastructure, willful killings, torture, rapes, as well as unlawful transfer and deportation of children, reminding us that for as long as there will be authoritarian around, peace should never be taken for granted. This war poses one fundamental question for all of us. What kind of world we want to live in? The current rules-based world order is the one that emerged from the ashes of the Second World War, based on international law, not imposed by anyone, but agreed by free nations. It's the one where powerful autocratic regimes would no longer be free to devour their neighbors, and the one where more democracies than ever have been able to flourish, where free markets and open trade have lifted more people out of poverty. Ladies and gentlemen, Albania has firmly condemned this brutal aggression, which is in the blatant breach of UN Charter and international law. As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council and as a co-pen holder with the United States on Ukraine there, Albania has emphasized the need for the accountability for the crimes committed in Ukraine. Albania was among the 42 member states to refer the war in Ukraine to the ICC, and we fully endorsed Bucha Declaration because war crimes must not be unpunished. We note also that Russia has stepped up its efforts in terms of destabilizing the influence by third actors in the Western Balkan region, using hybrid tactics and also elements of common history and religion, with the ultimate strategic goal of blocking reforms and derailing Euro-Atlantic integration efforts. In conclusion, I would say that maintaining the dialogue as part of the International Crimea Platform is crucial, it's very important. The security situation of the Black Sea and Azov region has serious implications on other regions as well, and there is needed a joint response to end the war in Ukraine and to think about the reconstruction of this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, dear speakers. Let me remind you that we have some restrictions in time, so if you deliver your national statement, you don't have more than 2 minutes, unfortunately. And the next speaker is Mr. Kusti Salm, the Permanent Secretary of the Estonian Defense Ministry. Do you prefer a microphone or the stage?
I'll be here. Hello, and thank you for the organizers. It's a great event. In Estonia, we very often call the Russian aggression against Ukraine existential. We very often call it a historic challenge. Well, first of all, we of course do it because we have a huge sympathy towards Ukrainian bravery, and it has sparked the desire for freedom in every Estonian, and I mean probably in every single country in this room. But at the same time, we acknowledge that what's at stake there is not only the front line in Bakhmut. It's also the basic principles that we need to adhere to. What's at stake in Ukraine now is something that needs to go into the dustbin of history. Attacking other nations to achieve your political goal needs to be thrown away. Aggression as a tool needs to be uprooted, and this is what we need to stand for, and that's why we have conferences like these. That's why we support Ukraine. The policy of sphere of influences is something that does not belong to 2023, and that's what we need to stand for there. And it becomes especially acute knowing that there is a shadow of potential negotiations. There's a shadow of one nation that we know that has attitude. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is up for negotiation. We know what is going to happen, and we need to understand that we cannot tolerate anything that will lead to frozen conflicts or another war. The war in Ukraine has revealed the murderous nature of Russia. It has revealed their barbaric actions, imperialism, revanchism, everything. But at the same time, it has also revealed the black spots in European defense readiness, in our ammunition stocks, our defense investments. And this needs to be remedied. we need it for supporting Ukraine, but we also need to ramp up our own national defenses, because this is incremental. And this falls into the same chapter as our collective efforts in supporting Ukraine. I'm extremely happy that we heard these messages from our greatest allies in Europe, Germany, Lithuania, Romania. Thank you for that. And let's win the war. That's the historic challenge for us.
Let's win the war. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is Mr. Frano Matušić, the State Secretary of the Foreign Ministry of Croatia.
Thank you, dear Amina. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to commend our Ukrainian and Romanian partners for organizing this important conference. And I'm pleased to note that the last gathering within the framework, international framework, Crimea platform, was held in Zagreb last October, when parliamentary dimension of the platform was launched. So the Russian invasion against Ukraine has brought dramatic implications, not only for Ukraine, but also for the Europe and the world's security architecture. This conflict is not only about Ukraine. Tomorrow, the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of any country might be at stake. Effective multilateralism is under threat, and it is our duty to protect it. And I agree with all of you who underlined that Ukraine is not only defending its internationally recognized borders and its territory, but also democracy itself and democratic values. So this is very important to emphasize also. So Russia actively attempts to destabilize Europe and weaken our unity through hybrid economic and other means. The Black Sea has become the epicenter of Moscow's aggressive and abusive military and hybrid actions. As a maritime country, Croatia understands very well the importance of free navigation. Russian interference also happened in other parts of Europe, especially in the Western Balkans, where Moscow influences economic policy and stirs up tensions through propaganda and disinformation. We are aware that the new geopolitical context is shining a spotlight on European strategic dependencies. The interplay between Russia's aggression and our dependence on fossil fuels, together with the ever-present impact of climate change, has become the force shaping our resilience and defending our strategic autonomy in critical sectors. The interlocked crises have exposed our vulnerabilities and dangers of reliance on one source of supply. Comprehensively mapping out and addressing vulnerabilities to Russian influence and reducing one-sided dependencies is crucial. While Moscow continues with its misleading rhetoric, propaganda, and distortion of facts on the ground, we must develop tools to detect access and disrupt disinformation campaigns and develop joint standard operating procedures for countering hybrid threats. We have to be prepared for the long-term and sustained support to Ukraine. Maintaining unity and coordination of the countries of the democratic world will remain an issue of the highest priority. On our part, Croatia will continue to contribute bilaterally as well as within international efforts to the best of our ability and as long as it takes. At the same time, the failure of Moscow's war plan in Ukraine may also be a lesson for future aggressors. Regardless of their military power, the democratic states' borders cannot be changed by force. And finally, speaking also from our own experience, equipment necessarily doesn't win war. People do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, dear Frano. Please pass our greetings and tremendous gratitude to Prime Minister Plenković for hosting the Parliament Summit. And the next speaker we have is the former ambassador to NATO of Turkey, today Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Basat Öztürk. Buyurunuz, bize mi geldiniz? Çok iyi, buyurunuz.
Thank you, Excellency Japarova. And it would have been, I think, a big loss if Turkey has not spoken here, which has the longest coastline in the Black Sea, the most powerful navy, second largest army in NATO, a NATO member since 1952, and a very influential regional power, not only in the Black Sea, in a wider region. So I think I really appreciate this opportunity that I am able to speak. Talking about values and democracy, my both Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense Minister could not come here in person because they are now campaigning for a very important election in Turkey. Both presidential and parliamentary elections will take place in 1 month, but they have sent with me their best regards, greetings, and wishes of success for this conference. And in this context, I should like to start by referring to some of those speakers who mentioned past mistakes. And in fact, we have to admit past mistakes, but they were not fully covered. In fact, the past mistakes include more than what happened in Crimea in 2014, because when chemical weapons were being used in Syria by the regime against its own people, for example, and when red lines were declared and when those red lines were not enforced, it was, I think, an indication for the whole world. But we have a border with Syria, 911 kilometers of borders. The intervention in Iraq, by the way, for example, the other war after we have all gone to Afghanistan, the largest and longest mission of NATO in Afghanistan for more than 20 years, almost 20 years, but we still continue, so I say more than 20 years. We have to remember the Bucharest Summit 2008 here in Bucharest. Paragraph 6 of the same communique was also mentioning about Afghanistan and the linkage of its security with the security of Euro-Atlantic. And we said neither us nor our Afghan partners would ever surrender the country to extremism, even forget about insurgency or terrorism. But the situation is now clear, and we tend to forget about it. We pretend that we had never been there maybe, but it's still there. So we have to deal with all those issues all around us, from Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Africa, everywhere. NATO intervened in Libya in 2011, then abandoned it to its fate. Those allies, some of those allies who were against the deployment of Turkish troops to Libya, was criticizing us and trying to eject Turkish troops out of Libya and supporting, in fact, those forces, including Wagner in Libya, against us. So this is also another thing which is important to remember. Why I'm saying these things, are they related to Black Sea security? Yes, because the problems are first and foremost stemming from within the alliance, within the European security, defense and security architecture. Because it's not unified, it's exclusive and divisive. Still is the case, because the European Union, for example, has adopted a strategic compass, which is not, in fact, equivalent to NATO's strategic concept, which was adopted in Madrid, and I was a negotiator there. In fact, Black Sea has been mentioned as an area of strategic importance, but it was not the only one mentioned there. And Russia was not only identified as one threat, there was another one, terrorism. In all its forms and manifestations, nobody is talking about terrorism. And how can you have a successful Vilnius summit without addressing the second major threat identified by NATO, which is terrorism? But we are also dealing with this scourge of terrorism everywhere, in Syria, in Iraq, and not against Daesh, Al-Qaeda, but also PKK and its extensions. What happens, for example, when Turkey intervenes, let's say, in Syria, in a legitimate manner, de-escalation zones, as you know, in Idlib, and to prevent further flux of refugees, migrants to Europe. We are hosting almost 5 million refugees in Turkey, but when we had to intervene in Syria, we were sanctioned by our allies, and it continues. We started to help Ukraine long before other allies, including the very famous Bayraktars. But you know, the cameras of these drones are not provided by one ally, which is still refusing to provide them, even under these circumstances, even when there is an ongoing war, even there are so many challenges rising challenges, we are still suffering. So I have just shared these things with you, saying that we try to understand the concerns of our allies. First and foremost, Ukraine, and especially Crimean Tatars. I also have the same descent from Tatars, and then we have a sympathy, but we have 3.2 million Tatars living in Turkey only. And ultimately, we will continue to support Ukraine. We will continue to support all our allies in the Black Sea, but first and foremost, it requires intensive, genuine, comprehensive consultation with us among the Black Sea allies. And then we can look for the future together in a more confident manner. Sorry for being long, but with the longest cost and with those features, I couldn't be less. So I did not
Teşekkür
do
ediyorum.
anything. Thank you very
Passat
much.
Bey, Mevlüt Bey'e de selamlarımızı gönderiniz lütfen. We do recognize an effort of Turkey in the peace broking and also with the grain initiative, which is another challenge in the Black Sea a lot. The next speaker is Ambassador of Japan, Mr. Hiroshi Ueda. Please, the floor is yours.
Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and my friends, ambassadors, on behalf of the Japanese government, first of all, I'd like to express my appreciation to foreign ministers, defense ministers of Ukraine and Romania for organizing this significant conference on the security of the Black Sea region. Japan consistently supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, including Crimea. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is an outrage that shakes the very foundations of the international order, including not only in Europe, but also in Asia. It should be severely condemned as a violation of international law. Last month, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida visited Ukraine, emphasizing solidarity with Ukraine and his determination to defend the free and open international order based on the rule of law through tough sanctions against Russia and strong support for Ukraine. Japan stands with the people of Ukraine who are working hard to defend their homeland from Russian aggression. Japan continues to work in close cooperation with the international community to achieve the restoration of peace and reconstruction in Ukraine as soon as possible. Japan have confirmed close cooperation with both Ukraine and Romania at the summit level. In addition to Prime Minister Kishida's visit to Kyiv last month, Prime Minister Kishida held a summit meeting with Romanian President Klaus Iohannis in Tokyo, and both leaders announced the upgrading of bilateral relations to a strategic partnership. Along with support and solidarity with Ukraine, we will also strengthen relations with neighboring countries. The government of Japan is steadily and seamlessly providing a total of approximately $7.6 billion in assistance to Ukraine and neighboring countries. Ukrainian unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force, such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, must not be tolerated anywhere in the world. Last week, Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi attended a NATO foreign ministers meeting and stated that Japan formulated a new national security strategy in the most difficult and complex post-war security environment, and that the strategy will strengthen cooperation with NATO and other allies and like-minded countries. Prime Minister Kishida recently announced a new plan for free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP. In the plan, he made it clear that FOIP cooperation will be expanded in order to lead the international community, which is at a historic turning point toward cooperation rather than division and confrontation. As Russia's aggression against Ukraine is protracted, it is important for the international community to respond with unity, and the role of the G7 has never been greater than ever before. Japan holds the G7 presidency this year. At the G7 Karuizawa Foreign Ministers meeting to be held this weekend, we hope to maintain the unshakable unity of the G7 and demonstrate our determination as the G7 to uphold the international order based on the rule of law. Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava. Thank you, Ambassador. Indeed, Prime Minister's visit to Ukraine was a very strong signal of support both within G20 and G7, and then his visit to Bucha, where Japan delivered generators, and those generators really warmed up the whole city of Bucha for several weeks during the blackout. This was really well taken. Thank you, Ambassador, for that humanitarian assistance that your country delivered. The next speaker is Mr. Paulo Cunha Alves, Ambassador of Portugal in Romania.
Dear Ministers, Your Excellencies, members of the panel and guests, I would like to start by thanking the organizers for this meeting here, Romania and Ukraine, and also thank the members of the panel for their important contribution. Russia's military aggression against Ukraine marked a profound change in the security and defense paradigm in Europe. For the past 14 months, we have witnessed an attempt to unilaterally redefine the European security architecture and to recreate areas of influence in European soil. The war in Ukraine has had and unfortunately will continue to have far-reaching effects, from dealing with the tragic consequences of destruction and the loss of life, to responding to humanitarian crises and to major disruptions to key maritime trade routes in the Black Sea, which exacerbates volatilities in foods and energy security as well. This reality emphasizes the point that the impact of the current war of aggression is not limited to Ukraine or even to Eastern Europe. It also represents a challenge to Euro-Atlantic security in other geographies and additional domains. As such, what happens in the Black Sea has global repercussions, and both short-term and long-term solutions are needed to ensure these consequences can be contained and overcome without further undermining global security and the rules-based international order. While our adversaries seek to undermine post-Cold War gains, we must reinforce our support to neighboring countries and increase the resilience of their democracies and societies. The Kremlin's challenge is a global one, and our response can and should be global. We have the tools for it, and we have the capacity to develop and adapt to new circumstances. This situation demands a collective effort, cooperation towards reinforcing the resilience of countries affected by the war, particularly in the field of food and energy security, is critical. The outcome of the war is uncertain, yet we must be clear about what we want: the full respect for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the restoration of peace and stability in Europe. As an ally, Portugal will actively work to protect and foster the cohesion and solidarity that underpin the Atlantic Alliance. NATO remains the cornerstone of our collective security. Portugal's commitment to this is clear, also and perhaps particularly so in the Black Sea region, wherein we have reinforced our Army's presence with one of the largest contingents of the Portuguese armed forces posted abroad, currently being stationed in Romania. Finally, Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine also showed us that we need a strong and effective rules-based multilateral order. The more some states defy international law, putting us all at risk, the more we must strengthen partnerships among the states who abide by it. However, the implications of the war of aggression initiated by Russia and the speed and strength of our response had consequences which are still difficult to determine. One thing, though, is perfectly clear. We share the same destiny, and we are stronger when we act together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dear colleagues, while we are running out of time, I have 3 requests more for the national statements, but probably I will give one floor to the Ambassador of Iceland, Mr. Hans Himmerson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be brief. With the effect of the full-scale Russian invasion in Ukraine being felt globally, Iceland's support for Ukraine is unwavering. The Russian aggression has put the international order to the test. We are faced with the fact that democracy, human rights and the rule of law need to be protected, and these values are worth defending. The stability and security of the Black Sea region is of fundamental importance to our common security. Russia has blatantly violated the European security order. We must, however, remain steadfast in our efforts to safeguard the principles that underpin our freedom. To this end, Ukraine must be provided with all possible support, and we must further deepen our cooperation within multilateral organizations. Iceland, currently holding the presidency of the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers, is firmly focused on delivering for Ukraine at the Reykjavik Summit in May, in 5 weeks' time. In particular, when it comes to accountability for Russia's aggression, and I repeat the word accountability. The summit will also be an important milestone to reaffirm our common values on which the Council was founded. For a truly democratic and just Europe, we have to address the challenges we face at home, in our backyard and further afield. We must seek innovative solutions while also remaining steadfast in upholding the values of the post-war regional and international architecture, and we must remember why these institutions were put up in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. So with this, I have to close the discussion without Q&A session, which I'm very sorry for that, but it was really crucial to hear the statements of those national countries relevant. Dear friends, the conclusion I believe that we all came to is that the formula is vision, action, and cohesion. And I believe that the lessons learned will be very important to implement practically with many small and big steps with one goal. So that good guys, as Peter said, will win and good things happen afterwards. Slava Ukraini!
Ladies and gentlemen, after this incredible panel, we invite you all for lunch. My colleagues in the room will guide you for lunch. Thank you very much.
And dear guests, we have a VR exhibition here where you can see the consequences of Russian aggression. And for those who decided to use them somewhere outside, please can you bring them back to the exhibition? Thank you.
But we need to prepare for the next. Exactly. Thank you very much.
Сейчас.